All right, you got to be careful what you ask for online because you may not get the answer you're expecting or hoping. That happened recently to NBC News and Capitol Hill correspondent Kasie Hunt. This week, she tried to defend her network's claims that Democrat Tulsi Gabbard was being promoted by a, quote, Russian machine, meaning RT, by asking to her followers this question. She says, "Who do you think is more credible?" Now, the response that followed wasn't exactly what she was looking for. So joining us now to break this stuff all down, our own reporter, Dan Cohen, who was the man originally behind the Tulsi Gabbard story that Ms. Hunt here is talking about. All right, Dan, first, remind us about who New Knowledge is and their role in the Alabama special elections that caused all of this scuffle between us and NBC.
Well, yeah, NBC cited this group of disinformation experts called New Knowledge as the source that the Kremlin is backing Tulsi Gabbard. Now, New Knowledge was exposed late in December 2018 for running what they called an elaborate false flag operation, in their own words, on the 2017 Alabama Senate race between Doug Jones and Roy Moore. So these are basically veteran spies. One of them worked in the NSA, they've worked in the military, and they ran disinformation operations like black ops campaigns against American voters. And these are the supposed experts that NBC is
right, these are psyops guys.
Exactly.
And now, obviously, you did a lot of research into that group. And if New Knowledge has been discredited by both the New York Times investigation, from your own extensive research into them, you have found yourself that they are lacking any credibility. You just pointed out those reasons. Why then do NBC, MSNBC, NBC is their parent company, why do they continue to use them and to cite them?
Well, I think New Knowledge is serving the exact purpose that it was meant to. I mean, MSNBC and NBC didn't make a mistake by citing these discredited experts who ran this disinformation operation. They cited them specifically because this is another disinformation operation. There's absolutely no evidence that Tulsi Gabbard has any links to Russia or Assad or any of these people that they're saying. So they go to New Knowledge for the same reason as you know, New Knowledge served before. This is a disinformation operation waged against the American public.
So you're saying this is deliberate?
Definitely.
I mean, what are they trying to achieve by this deliberate use of that tactic?
Well, anybody who challenges the kind of status quo of permanent war, heightened tensions with Russia, we need regime change in Syria, we need to take out Maduro in Venezuela. Anyone who challenges that has to be taken out. And the way to do that is this old McCarthyite campaign of smearing them as a Russian agent. And that's, they see a major threat in someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who is a veteran of the Iraq War, unlike, these kind of chicken hawk pundits at MSNBC who have
sitting at round tables.
Exactly, who are chastising her for criticizing war. She's actually seen it, and that's why they want to take her out.
And then outside of, a media investigation, who is now discrediting New Knowledge, if what NBC claims to be true, why hasn't there been any sort of federal investigation or legal investigation into these guys? How are they still operating?
That's a great question. I mean, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall announced he was considering opening a probe into New Knowledge's actions in the Alabama special election, but that was at the end of December. It's been about 6 weeks now. We haven't heard anything. I mean, this should be one of the biggest scandals we've seen in a long time. The Justice Department appointed Robert Mueller to lead a special counsel investigation into alleged Russian meddling, and there's still, a year and a half later, there's still no evidence of that, but we do have evidence of meddling that's coming from inside the House.
Right, and if Tulsi Gabbard was herself a Russian puppet of any sort, a Putin puppet as they like to frame her, how come her name hasn't appeared on any Mueller, any comments from the Mueller team, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's kind of surprising. It's surprising that her name hasn't appeared. Exactly.
I mean, if she is what they claim her to be, then I don't know how she's sitting on Capitol Hill right now. That's the deep dive, Jim.
Right.
All right. Thank you for sharing that with us. I hope you get yourself out of this trolling thing that's happening to you on Twitter. Our friend Dan Cohen, thank you so much. And joining us for more on this media madness, investigative journalist Ben Swann. All right, Ben, what do you make of all this new network war that's being leveled against RT?
Well, it's first of all, as you said, be careful what you ask for, right? So when this NBC news correspondent essentially tweets out and says, compare our great, solid, fact-finding reporting with this propaganda from RT, and the majority of the people responding say, actually, I prefer the RT story, it demonstrates something that I think she wasn't expecting, which is that people can actually read. And when they read the stories and they see that NBC doesn't actually have a factual basis for anything they're saying about Tulsi Gabbard, nor does NBC cite anyone credible. The fact that they would cite new knowledge in this article goes beyond just journalistic failure. It approaches the level itself of being propaganda. And so when you go to someone like New Knowledge and say, here, these guys are saying that Tulsi Gabbard is a puppet of Putin, and then you take a look at Glenn Greenwald, who, by the way, has no association with RT, who wrote for The Intercept specifically about this and said, hey, by the way, look at New Knowledge. RT's written about it. They left all that out of their report. So it is absolutely disgraceful that this article was ever even allowed on NBC.
Yeah, and Ben, I want to get your take on the state of journalism in America as a whole, because let's be honest, the Twitter comments there, they call out NBC for being shills of the U.S. government.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what most people see today. So here's the problem that I think that the mainstream media has run into, and really that the government has run into. So we have a government effort right now to silence dissension in this country, and they're doing it through tech companies. They're doing it through a variety of means. And one of those is to say that anyone who is anti-establishment is, essentially working on behalf of a foreign power, which is completely untrue. But as part of that, they've really taken aim at RT. And I think the reason they have is because they see the effectiveness of what RT is doing, which is presenting facts that you can't get in other places. And so as I think people have seen that, they already recognize as a public, we recognize that mainstream media is lying to us every day. Fox is lying, CNN is lying, MSNBC is lying. We know that. When they stand up and pound their chests and say, take a look at what we've done, great reporting we've done, and there's nothing to support it, it only further leads to that demise.
I mean, but the sad thing is, Ben, there are a contingent of viewers out there that buy it, hook, line, and sinker.
I think an increasingly small number of people. If you go back 30 or 40 years, if you just go back 20 years, less than 20 years to the start of the Iraq War, how many people believed the media in everything they said about that war versus the way that there is so much more skepticism right now, so much skepticism that the U.S. government and U.S. military has not been able to do in Syria what they've wanted to do, what they did in Iraq, even what they did in Libya. I think even over the last 10 years, there's been an enormous erosion in the influence that media has had in this country. Yes, there are people who still believe it. The step that's being taken now is to say there are too many people who aren't trusting the gatekeepers, and so we have to silence them completely, and we have to smear them. So the Russia comment is now just a slur that's used to attack anyone by throwing out this word, Russia, Russia, Russia. It doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning to it when you actually take a look at the facts. And
now, speaking of that, let's talk about this alleged Putin puppet, Ms. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. Yeah. She's being attacked for simply not being a war hawk. She has seen war firsthand. She's a veteran. She was once a media darling when she first got into office, but suddenly now they've all turned against her. Why?
Well, because at the time that she ran, she essentially was an Iraq war veteran who was running as a Democrat, and she's a beautiful woman. And so they looked at her and said, she's everything we want her to be. She's, she'll get that military vote. She's good looking. She's charismatic. She has all these things we're looking for until she opens her mouth and says, we need to stop fighting these immoral wars, and we need to bring our troops home, and we need to get out of Syria, and we need to get rid of this new Cold War. And now they hate her because she does that. But here's the other thing about Tulsi, and you really have to think about this. Of all the people who are talking about running for president in 2020, and there's like 20 of them on the Democratic side, not one of them is anti-war except for Tulsi Gabbard. Not one of them is talking about ending this new Cold War except for Tulsi Gabbard. She is the only single one, by the way, and I think you mentioned this also, who's ever been in a war. None of these people are veterans. So she's seen war, she's anti-war. How do we have two parties and nobody in those parties is anti-war anymore? That's a crazy idea. And the one person who is, Tulsi Gabbard, they're trying to smear her before she can even get off the floor.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, the fact that we're even talking about her right now, Ben, you know, this is going to circulate the media circus, and this is also going to be proof that we're apparently, you know, pushing this Russian agenda for Tulsi when we're simply stating the facts. I mean, how do you deny that she was a, you know, good-looking woman, intelligent, war veteran? Her resume is there for everybody to see, but somehow that's going to be spinned and put on poor Tulsi. So
absolutely,
we will wish her luck. And thank you, my friend, for spending some time with us today. As always, Ben Swann.
Thanks, Manila.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.